Okay, good morning. My name is Roger Blowey. I'm a resident of Minsterworth. Been here for 45 years, something like that. And I suppose I really wanted to know what it was that made the village tick. I wanted to get involved with the village. We have a village hall and a church. We used to have a school. Unfortunately, the school is recently closed. We used to have a pub, which is also recently closed. We used to have a village shop, which is also recently closed. By recently, all of this has happened in the last 4 or 5 years. And having become involved with the parish council, I just thought, well, this is no good. We're here with almost a dying village. Why is it that this is happening to us? And clearly one of the reasons is simply because we don't have the green shoots of growth coming up through. We don't have enough young people. Because of the house prices, they have to move elsewhere. So they would either move into Gloucester itself or move out further away from Gloucester, maybe going west to have cheaper accommodation. I suppose this was going on in my mind, and it wasn't my idea to go out for the affordable housing. The two happened at the same time. So as part of the parish council I can't remember exactly when, in 2011, it was around that sort of early 2011, this concept of affordable housing came in. I knew nothing about affordable housing, but I was aware of the fact that there wasn't enough starter homes in this area. We have 4 children ourselves, we have 16 grandchildren, and we have 1 great-grandchild, and they are now getting to the age when they need housing, and you think, goodness, so how are they going to get onto the housing ladder? So there are several strands that came together that made me interested in this concept. We did the housing needs survey, where they were able to show that there was a need. There were several needs, to be fair. There was a need for houses for young children, and there was a need for older people who wished to stay in the village to downsize to smaller bungalows, maybe with disabled facilities, with easier gardens and so on. We thought, yes, this is an option. At that stage, this is in 2011, 2012, getting planning permission was quite difficult, and several times planning permission had been turned down for applications in Minsterworth, but we realised that for affordable housing we could get a rural exceptions planning. So either rural exception or rural exemption, I don't know, one or the other, and therefore that would make things easier for us. I'd be guessing, but I would have thought now we're in 2013. One of the sites that I'd always favoured was adjacent to the village hall. Our favoured site next to the village hall actually belonged to a landowner who in generations past had actually been very generous to the village, that her grandmother had donated the land for the village hall to be built approximately 100 years ago, and her mother had been a benefactor, and the lady herself had donated an area of land for an overflow car park to the village hall 20 years previously. There was an issue about the access going into the village hall, because the village hall owned the access, so Rooftop had to negotiate an easement for the access into the village hall. The overflow car park, we were also going to drive across the overflow car park of the village hall, and there was a clause in the deed of gift of that piece of land that said, should that area of land be used for any other purpose in the future, then that land, the whole of that piece of land, would revert to the landowner. There were some objection from within the village. There were those who were concerned that affordable housing would be bringing in the type of people that may cause social disruption within the village. Having decided on our favoured site, we had yet another open day where people could see how it was going to develop, and everyone had an opportunity to come in to talk. This issue of exchanging letters between solicitors who were acting for second and third parties was just, to me, painfully slow, painful in the extreme. So what we did in the village hall one day, we had rooftops and their solicitors. We had the landowner and her solicitors. We had the village hall trust and their solicitors. By that time, I suppose I was getting a bit desperate, and by that time I'd actually was also part of the village hall trust, and it goes just to try to get things to go forward. So everybody sat down in the room. We identified the areas of difficulty in terms of legal documentation, easements, payments for the easements, and so on. So we knew exactly where we were, exactly what needed to be done. Oh, one other point which I missed, which was causing a big issue, was that the Village Hall Trust is a charity, and so to dispose of any asset, you have to get permission from the Charity Commission, and getting permission from the Charity Commission to allow these easements and to allow an effective disposal of asset was also really difficult. So we got in the room, we knew what we had to do. I should think by now we were into, when did we start? 2017. We're now in, again, I'm guessing August 2017, and we knew that the grant from the HCA, the Homes and Community Association, from government, which I think is £500,000, that was going to run out in September. So there was we had a real deadline to get to get to this point. Absolutely no. I'm obviously an amateur in this. I had no idea, absolutely no idea, that it could possibly take this length of time, that it could possibly be this complicated. If only we'd started this project 5 years sooner, because the school is immediately opposite the housing. We've even got a central reservation in the road, and my concept was they'd come out of the houses across the road into the school. They'd go to the village hall for the disco and meet up. They'd go to the church to get married, which is just at the bottom. They'd have their wedding reception in the village hall. Their children would go to the school, and when they eventually moved on, they'd have their funeral in the church and their wake in the village hall. But we didn't quite make it. That's how it felt.